What's up, gang?
Jack, over here, other side. Obviously, it's been a little bit since we last saw you. I assume due to the injury and stuff. So I guess physically, how are you feeling, and how is camp? Coming off of what looks like a pretty serious arm injury.
Yeah, physically never felt better. Had to make some changes. Obviously, with such a long break, I did a longer camp. I usually do an 8 or a 10-week camp, and this one I did 18 weeks, split into 3 6-week blocks. It was obviously just because that residual fitness you usually carry through camp to camp probably wasn't there. And the goal with splitting it up like that was to try and make sure that I didn't roll into fight week kind of limping over the line with the volume. It was that I would come into fight week bursting through the door in a really good shape physically, and I think we've done that.
Will you try to do that for camps moving forward, or is this just because of the long layoff?
No. I think having done the work, now if I back up quickly a couple times, but I think being first up, anytime I have a break of sort of longer than 3 or 4 months between fights, that I'll be looking to do something similar to what I did because it worked really well.
How soon after the injury could you go 100% in camp?
I got up to going about 90% after 2.5 months, 3 months. And then I had a little setback, which put me back a few weeks. And then the last 6 months, I've been at 100%.
And obviously a little bit of a change up in opponent. I think it was Gavin Tucker now to Herbert Burns. And I think you said something on your Instagram where it was like he was kind of on our radar to begin with. So, when they came to you with Herbert, you seemed fine with it. So did you have to adjust anything in camp? And were you actually looking forward to fighting Gavin before he fell out?
I was really looking forward to fighting Gavin. The style that Gavin brought, I found really interesting, the way he chains his takedowns together and that sort of thing. He was a southpaw, so the only thing we really had to change over to Herbert was doing more orthodox stuff. And obviously, Herbert does a lot of things well, and he does a couple of things exceptionally well. So it was about just locking in on those things that he does exceptionally well and making sure that I'm prepared for that.
Did you have time to bring in anyone specifically to kind of help you with those specific things that he excels at?
I'm pretty lucky. I'm from Absolute MMA, so we got Lockie Giles and guys who are at such a high level. And Simon Carson, my coach, obviously, as soon as we got the change, he programmed some stuff in. And like I said, we kind of thought we were going to get Herbert when we got Jamal last year. So we'd kind of already done some stuff in preparation for this fight.
In terms of his career, what are you expecting from him in there? He's on a bit of a slide. He's been knocked out quite a bit recently. So do you think he's going to come in there like, I have something to prove?
Yeah, look, people being, you see comments and you hear people talk and it's like, you can get Herbert to quit, show him the door, all this sort of stuff. I'm prepared for Herbert to come in there with his back up against the wall, and he's got a last name to prove. He's got a career to hold on to. He's got everything on the line in the same way that I do. So I'm by no means taking this as, a fight where, I think it's going to be easy to get one up over him. But in saying that also, the skill difference is going to be massive between the two of us, particularly on the feet. And if the door's there, I'm going to show him it.
Last one for me, unrelated to this fight, but I'm sure you've heard, but November 1st, they're going to start implementing those new rule changes with the 12-6 elbows will be allowed, and they've redefined grounded opponents. So, what do you make of that, and are you looking forward to, these rule changes?
100%. Those rules have needed to go for a long time, and I think it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, Jack, just over here.
My man.
Hey, you're in Perth. Have you checked out Ascot Racecourse yet?
I did. I went down to the stables at Ascot on Monday morning and went and watched track work at Belmont Park, which was great. I saw a few 3-year-olds that looked pretty talented getting around, and I think one of them's in next Thursday, so I might have a bit of a dabble there.
And did you get any momentum at all on getting the horse on your fight trunks?
No, look, I think when I asked for that, I knew that it was probably a stretch. But I think it's important to plant the seeds for these things going forward. I think Connor was excellent at that. Connor sort of touched on things that he wanted to do later in his career, earlier in his career. And then sort of as they came to fruition, it's kind of like a succession plan for himself. And I think even though being on the prelims and first fight back after 11 months was probably unlikely to get the horse on the shorts, I think it just makes it a big story when I do get up to the top of the card and have the opportunity to do it.
And you mentioned about sort of planning those almost storylines in your career. You've talked about Ilia Topuria and the weigh-in window and the scale and all that. Is that beef with him still there?
Look, to be honest, I've just been watching a lot of Ilia tape lately. I really like the way he moves as a fighter and how he slows down and lets the fight come to him. As far as that, look, he was cutting weight. Like, everyone turns into a bit of a dick when they're cutting weight, even me. So I'm sure we can let bygones be bygones. But hey, if once we get to the point end of that division, anyone can get it.
And final one from me. Your teammate, Khan Offley, has joined the Breaking Leg Club. How do you welcome him into that club out of Absolute MMA?
Yeah, well, he's about my height. He's about my build, and we spend a lot of time together. So it makes sense that we both get onto that leg breaking stuff. But, Khan has worked exceptionally hard to put himself in the position to get on the Ultimate Fighter, and now he's in the final. And I know my coach, Simon, is flying straight out from Perth to Vegas to go and corner him for that. And I'm really hopeful and excited that he can join me in the UFC.
Jack, just one quick one, just to your left. Obviously, Lisa Kiriakou, teammate of yours, fought on the road to UFC this year, and obviously she's back next month fighting against Cynthia Calvillo. I guess, what are your thoughts on her? Obviously, the UFC hasn't signed any Australian females in 4 years, so she's close to that door. I guess, what are your thoughts on her and her career moving forward?
Look, Lisa, as much as she feels like she's been around for a while, she's only been training for 6 years, so she still has a tendency to sometimes make mistakes that you wouldn't get at that top level of the sport. But in saying that, athletically and commitment to the sport, she has everything there that she needs to get to the top level. This Cynthia Calvillo fight is a chance to go in against someone who has fought at the very top end. So she's just got to go in there and do what she's capable of, which is take her out. And, that's another one who I'm hopeful that she does the job, and then the UFC put her on the radar.
Jack, right here. Over here.
Hey, what's up, cuz?
What's up, bro? Obviously, the last one, it didn't go the way you wanted, but we've seen the run that Chepe's on right now in the UFC. So is that one you want to run back in the future? And also, what does it say about you to see how well he's doing in the UFC right now?
Yeah, look, nobody's happier for Chepe to do well than me, to be honest. That franks my form line, given how well I was doing in that fight early. You saw how dominant he was within the grappling and how the pace he just put on against Damon Jackson on the weekend. And you saw that he wasn't able to do any of that stuff against me in the first round. So it puts me in a really good position. As far as running that one back, if we both end up in that top 10, top 15, I'm sure that not only me and Chepe will want to run it back, but I'm sure the UFC and the fans in general will want to see that again. But as far as, holding on to that loss and having any kind of, personal vindication to go back after him, there's none there. I'm on my path and he's on his path. And if we end up crossing again, then we'll see what happens.
And then I know you did some golfing with one of our boys, Salim. What's the handicap sitting at right now?
Yeah, the handicap's down to about 12, but I reckon that day we got out on the course and the marshal came out to us and said, "Hey, boys, we're here to look after you, so what are you going to do?" And Salim looked at him and goes, "Hey, can you just bring us like a couple of shots every hole until we finish?" And the guy goes, "Yeah, right." And I was like, "Oh, my God, this guy's mad."
Jack. Nope, you go first.
Okay. Just two quick ones. Back on the last loss, I think I also saw a video of you. Some people are saying "Oh, it was an injury that you lost and all this," but then you were very complimentary and said, "It was a good judo throw. I got hurt because of what he did." Were you hearing a lot of noise that people maybe not making excuses, but kind of
yeah, you got to give people their flowers when they do things well, and we prepared for Chepe to be a really skilled judoka, and he beat me by throwing me with a really skilled judo throw. So to take credit away from him and say that was an accident or, a fluke is just a lack of understanding of the sport and how the sport works. It's the equivalent of Conor McGregor catching you with the left hand and you go, that was a fluke. Well, it's not. It's what they do. So, good on Chepe. It was a good throw. I'm, as far as pathways going forward, the surgeon told me that the good thing about elbows is once they heal, they're better than they ever were. So I don't have to worry about it going forward now that I've fully rehabbed it. And, I'm full steam ahead.
And then just last quick one for me. Can I get your thoughts on the main event between Jenkins and Izzy?
Yeah, absolutely. I've been lucky enough to spend a fair bit of time around Adesanya. He's a superstar person and he's a superstar athlete. And from the moment I walked into the hotel and saw him this week, he just has a different energy about him. There's something about him that's electric. And this isn't taking anything away from him. I might even have just been a reflection of my own energy in Sydney, but in Sydney that wasn't there, I felt. And as soon as I saw him, I was like, "Oh, this man's on."
Jack, just back here.
Hello, mate.
Hello. Before that fight, you were riding a 9-fight win streak, and this isn't a question to take away what Chepe did, but you suffer that loss. It is an odd loss, and then you're forced to sit on the shelf. How is your momentum as a fighter at the moment?
I think it's important with wins and losses to take both and see what you can do better. So I kind of just looked at my UFC career as a whole. Rather than that specific fight, I just looked at, okay, since Contender Series, what things can I do better and what things have I done well? And then instead of looking outwards about, maybe like, do I need to go to America? Do I need to do this? Do I need to do that? I just kind of looked inwards, like, what can I personally do better? So a couple of things like complacency in the grappling. Like, I think if you look at the Jamal fight, I won that fight, but there was times in that where I could have been a little bit more active in the grappling to really put myself as the winner of that fight. So the things I've worked on over that 12 months is still the stuff from that last 4 fights that I thought I could have done better anyway.
Thank you very much.
No worries.
How you going, Jack?
Good, mate.
Recently you mentioned that you were looking to fight maybe in March or April because you had recovered pretty well from your injury. Can you talk us through that a little bit, and are you looking to get in another fight by year's end?
Yeah, absolutely. I tend to, when I'm planning my fights, I don't look an hour past, Sunday morning.
Yeah.
So Sunday morning at 5:30, I'll be on the bus, and at 9 o'clock, I'll be on the bus back to the venue, and that bus ride back here will be the first time I think about the next fight that I'm going to have. As far as fighting in March or April, I was ready to go into a camp at that point, and the UFC had told my management that, potentially we can get him on around that time, but we're coming back to August in Perth, so if you're happy to just lock in for that, then we'll lock you in and we'll get your opponent 8 weeks out. And I said to my coaches, hey, with the long layoff, let's just do a long lead in. And they both agreed with me. So we did the long lead in. We got the opponent 8 weeks out. And even though that changed a few weeks ago, it's been smooth.
And you mentioned recently that you'll be unhappy with anything less than adding momentum to what, to your fights. And you wouldn't just be happy with an okay performance. Can you again talk us through that, and how has that affected your preparation for the fight?
Yeah, for sure. Like, I think every performance I've had in the UFC has been a C. Like, I don't think I've really shown anything that I can do. I think if you look at some of the fights I had before I got in the UFC, I felt better going in. There's probably an adjustment period to the bright lights and the big stadiums and the media and all that sort of stuff that now I'm a little bit more familiar with, that I'm going to be able to take in my stride with me. But like I said, that momentum that I had going into the Chepe fight, if I'm not there or higher by the end of, Sunday morning, I'll be disappointed with the performance. I'm going out there to make a statement that I'm back on that top 15 trajectory, just as Chepe will be now, and that's it.
Thank you, man.
Jack, before you go, you famously were representing yourself for a little while there. Obviously now with Chosen Advisory, what was the decision behind that, and kind of what benefit has it brought you?
Basically, I was represented before I got in the UFC, and then there was a bit of change with management stuff that happened, and I ended up representing myself just for the first thing when I was already in the UFC. That was becoming more and more difficult as your profile gets bigger, as more things become out of your control, and the only people that I would trust with, my career and my money and all that sort of stuff is Chosen Advisory. There's no other management that I would have, even looked to go towards. So I rang Daniel and Tim from Chosen and asked them and said, hey guys, look, I really need someone. Would you guys be happy to take me on? And they were more than happy to. And it's been smooth sailing since then. Everything we've set out to do, we've done pretty quickly.
Jack.
Hey, mate.
Hey. Just talking about this fight being in Australia, obviously a little bit far away from your actual home, but are you a fighter that prefers the comfort of being within your own country on fight week, or do you prefer to be abroad and get away from any distractions and fully focus in on the fight?
Positives and negatives of both, for sure. Like, it sounds so silly, but like the smells of things in your home country and like Woolworths and Coles and knowing which aisles to go to and stuff like that actually makes you feel good. And I'm allowed to bet on the horses here, where when I go overseas, you get IP blocks. So I don't have to worry about a VPN and that sort of stuff, which is a nightmare. The little creature comforts are great at home, but as far as the crowd energy, I feel like you've got to, as an athlete, get yourself hyped up off both. Like, I'm really going to, like, you guys will see on the walkout on Sunday, the kind of energy that the crowd's going to bring for me, and I'm going to feed off that. But if I'm going to Mexico to fight a Mexican or Brazil to fight a Brazilian, they're chanting at me, I'll be feeding off that as well. You've got to go both ways.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.